Today I'm going to teach you how to round numbers and how to talk about large numbers in simpler form. We round numbers in everyday life all of the time. Let's take a look at one example here. The population of San Francisco is 837,442. You wouldn't often hear somebody talking about the population of San Francisco using that number. You probably hear them say something like, the population of San Francisco is around 800,000. This is an example of how we can round numbers to make them a little bit more simple. Think of all the reasons why you would round numbers. One could be to avoid such a lengthy number like 837,442, but another reason could be to make numbers easier to do operations with. For example, if you wanted to know the population of San Francisco and the population of Oakland, you could use rounding to make it a little bit quicker when you're deciding what their total is. Using rounding, we would say that the population of Oakland is more like around $400,000. So when somebody asks the population of San Francisco and Oakland, we could quickly just add these two to say the population is around 1,200,000 people. That is a lot of people. It's important that we remember place value when we're rounding numbers. In third grade, you often rounded numbers to the tens place value and to the hundreds place value. Today, we are going to round numbers to even greater place values. I'm going to show you how I decided to round this number from the population of San Francisco into $800,000. So I want to round this number to the highest place value, which is the number to the left. That 8 is in the 100,000 place value. Now that I know that I'm going to round this number to the nearest 100,000 place value, I have to think of the closest number that is less than this number and the closest number that is greater than this number. The closest number that is less than this number is $800,000. or 1,000 people. I'm using a number line to help illustrate my thinking, which is something I'm going to ask you to do as well. The closest number that is greater than this number would be 900,000. My next step is to determine what number would be the exact middle of these two numbers. And for this case, it would be 850,000. I could prove that this number is in the middle by showing that it is 50,000 away from both of my numbers. My next step is to look at my number. Where does it fall? In this situation, my number falls in between the 800 to the 850,000. Since it falls into this half of my number line, that would mean I would round down to my 800,000. If this number was greater and it fell into this half, I would round it up to 900,000. This method of proving on the number line is why you often look at the number next to the number that you're rounding to. This is just a way to explain your thinking a little bit more. Let's do another example. In this problem, we're going to use the number 7,442, and it says to the highest place value. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my number that's furthest on the left because that's my highest digit, and that is in the 1,000 place value. I want to find the closest number that's less than and the closest number that's greater than. So the closest number that's less than the 7,442 would be 7,000. And then the one that's greater than would be 8,000. My next step is to find what my middle number is. In this case, it's 7,500. And remember, I can check my work to be sure that this number is 500 and this number is 500. So we want to make sure that the distance between these two represents the same value. Finally, I look back at my number. Where does my number fall? In this case, my number falls in this half. It falls right about here at 7,442. Since it falls in this half, I'm going to go ahead and round it down to 7,000. Again, that's often why we look to the right of the number when we're rounding to give us a hint about where it falls on our number line and our value. Go ahead and look at this number. Follow the steps that I did above to label and round for this number. If you labeled your greatest number 3,000 and your least number 2,000 and your middle number 2,500, and then you labeled where that number would go, which is in the bottom half, and decided to round down to 2,000, then you are correct. How do you round numbers when the question gives you a specific place value that it wants you to round it to? In this case, it's asking me to round it to the hundreds place value. Well, you follow the same exact steps as you did before. Here, I would first identify where my hundreds are. In this case, it represents the 8 digit. Then I would decide what my least number is and my highest number. So in this case, it would be 4,800, and this here would be 4,900. My next step would be to find my middle ground, my middle number. And remember, I can prove that this is the middle number because it's 50 away here and it's 50 digits away from there. So the value is the same from both numbers, which proves that it is in the middle. Then I look at my number. Where does it fall on this number line? Well, in this case, it falls right about here at 4,865 because it's greater than 850, but it's less than 900. Since it's in this top half, I would decide to round up to 4,900. Again, that's often why we look at the digit to the right to decide if we're going to round up or round down. Take a look at this number. The question is asking to round to the nearest tens place value. I'll go ahead and give you the first step. First, you want to identify what digit you are rounding to. Go ahead and try to finish the rest on your own. If you got to this point and got stuck, you probably are not the only one. You can see in this situation, our number ends up being halfway in between the two numbers we're considering to round it to. Well, it's a common convention that if the number falls exactly in between the two, to always round up. There's no real logic behind this. This is just a rule that we follow in math. You probably learned this last year in 3rd grade as well. So in this case, we would round it to 62,380 if we're rounding to the nearest tens place value. Today, during your do section of your learning plan, you're going to complete the rounding numbers task. In all of the rounding numbers tasks, you're going to round to the nearest 1,000. You will also use a number line, just like we used here, to identify the lowest, the highest, and the mid in order for you to decide if you're going to round up or you're going to round down. In addition to that, you'll also be answering some word problems, so be sure to model your thinking when you're answering your word problems as well. After you finish your task, move down to the right section of your learning plan. In this section, I want you to think about the following number, 1,958. What are two different numbers you could round to? Why would you round to those numbers? If you're getting stuck on this, think about this number in terms of money or in terms of students at a school. That might help you decide how you want to round your number. Log this response in your math notebook and be ready to share it. Have fun rounding today and be sure to bring all of your work to your next Google Meet.